Hey guys, today we are going to be talking about classifying quadrilaterals. And normally, if we were in class, I would be passing this out to you and we would be going through it together. But in this situation, I'm on a video, and I recommend what you should do is watch the video all the way through, and then once I finish getting everything else put in and going over it, if you hit pause, then you can add this to your math journal. If you don't have your math journal, just go ahead and put it on a piece of paper. And I realize that you're gonna have to try to draw some of these shapes on your own. If it's not perfect, no big deal, just do the best you can. The main thing that we're wanting to focus on is that you know some of these different vocabulary words and that you understand these vocabulary words. So we're talking about classifying quadrilaterals. Well, let's talk about what is a quadrilateral. Well, a quadrilateral is a polygon with 4 sides. Some of you may be wondering, well, what's a polygon? Well, the 2 rules for a polygon are it has to be a closed shape and it has to have straight sides. We went over that right before spring break. So if you're looking right here, quadrilaterals can be divided up into, I'm gonna cover this part up for a second, into 3 different categories. And we're gonna start over here with this one. This shape over here is kind of an irregular shape. It's 4 sides, but the main thing, this is called a trapezium. And the main thing you need to know about a trapezium is it has no parallel sides. None of its sides are parallel, and this is usually going to be an irregular type of quadrilateral. Then our next type of quadrilateral is a trapezoid. And the rule for a trapezoid is that it has 1 pair of parallel sides. And I've highlighted these 2 sides right here are parallel. These 2 sides are not parallel. They would eventually, if they kept going, they would intersect with each other, so they would not be considered parallel. I drew another trapezoid right up above, and what I wanted you to notice is that trapezoids can have right angles. But what I want you to notice is that this side over here and this side over here are not parallel. There is still only 1 pair of parallel lines. So that's a trapezoid, has 1 pair of parallel sides. A parallelogram has 2 pairs of parallel sides. And so this parallelogram, I've highlighted the 2 horizontal lines in pink. They are parallel. Then these 2 lines that are going diagonal, and I have highlighted in orange, they are parallel with each other. So there are 2 pairs of parallel sides here. Then if you notice underneath parallelograms, we kind of branch off and we have several different things here. So the first one we're going to talk about is a rectangle. And we all know what a rectangle is. It is a special type of parallelogram, and it has right angles. So I've gone ahead and drawn in the symbol to show that these are right angles, and these 2 sides are parallel, and those 2 sides are parallel. So this would be considered a rectangle is a special type of parallelogram. When we go over here to this shape, we notice that it does have 2 pairs of parallel sides, but it does not have right angles. It is a rhombus. A long time ago, we might have called that a diamond, but mathematicians, in the mathematical term for that, is a rhombus. And a rhombus is a parallelogram with congruent sides, is what that says. And what congruent means is it means that all of these sides are equal, kind of like a square, but it can't be a square because it's missing those right angles. Which leads me to our next shape, which is a square. And a square is a special type of parallelogram that has right angles and congruent sides. So these 2 lines are parallel with each other, and then these 2 lines are parallel with each other, and all these sides are congruent, and it has 4 right angles. So a square is actually a special type of rhombus. It could also be called a rhombus. It could be called a rectangle. It could be called a parallelogram, and it could be called a quadrilateral. And that is something that we are going to be adding to our notes as well. A rule that you need to make sure you understand that I am going to be adding over here to the side is a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle cannot be a square. And that's really the same thing for a rhombus. And the reason why is because the rectangle is missing the congruent sides. A rhombus can't be a square either because it's missing the right angles, but it does have the congruent sides. So this is a rule that you need to understand. A square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle cannot be a square. And then next I have listed a square can be called. We're going to list all of the things that we could call a square, which if we started up at the top, it could be called a quadrilateral. It is a four-sided polygon. I have the wrong pen here. All right, so we could name it a quadrilateral. Then secondly, we could name it a parallelogram. A square has two pairs of parallel sides. So we could also call it a parallelogram. I would recommend making sure you know this because you might be seeing this on a quiz sometime in the near future. So I would make sure that you have this written down. All right. A square could also be called a rectangle because it is a parallelogram with right angles. And a square could also be called a rhombus because it is a parallelogram with congruent sides. And then of course the most obvious is it could also be called a square. All right, so this is where I would hit pause and I would make sure that you have all of this information, whether you take a screenshot or you write it down, but make sure that you have this vocabulary handy because you're going to need it whenever you practice these vocabulary terms soon.